Did you know? Grand Theft Auto San Andreas was originally going to feature multiple depictions of fully displayed sexual activity. President of Rockstar Games, Sam Houser, listed in an email to his operations director, Jennifer Colby, that he'd like oral sex, full sex in multiple positions, dildo sex, including the ability to kill somebody with a dildo, whipping and masturbation to be displayed through cutscenes and in-game. At the time, most any graphic depiction of sexual activity in a game would earn it an adults-only rating. According to Colby, that would eliminate roughly 80% of their distribution channels for the game. As such, cuts had to be made. When Houser saw the suggested cuts, he replied, "This is way more than I expected. Is this really as far as we can push it? I just cannot believe that." Changing this stuff will absolutely have a time impact. Since losing out on such a massive percentage of potential revenue was out of the question, Houser would have to find a way to remove the content. This decision came roughly 8 weeks before GTA San Andreas' scheduled release date, an insufficient amount of time to actually remove the content. Instead, the sexually explicit scenes were wrapped in such a way that they would be inaccessible to the player, despite remaining present on the disc. GTA San Andreas launched on PS2 on time with an M rating from the ESRB. Despite Rockstar's attempts to block access to the content, a group of modders in the GTA community found files with names like sex, kissing, S&M, and blowjobs while looking through the game's code. A modder by the name of Barton Waterduck created a viewer that could render these files as animated stick figures, then later with the game's character models. Modder Patrick Wildenborg then figured out the script necessary to attach these scenes to the rest of the game. However, the modding community was yet unable to modify the PS2 version of the game and thus waited for the PC version before revealing what they'd found. Houser and the team agreed to ship the PC version of the game as it was on PS2, but would later release an AO-rated patch allowing PC players to unlock the darkness. Since the code was the same, Wildenborg implemented the change to the code and discovered the sexual content wasn't just cutscenes, but a pair of minigames. One minigame involved tapping a button to raise an excitement bar while CJ smacked his girlfriend's backside. The other involved moving the analog stick in time with the character's movements to simulate the act of sex, though all characters involved remained fully clothed throughout. On June 9th, 2005, 2 days after the PC version released, Wildenborg released a mod allowing players to access this content. The mod was named Hot Coffee, referencing the sexual euphemism CJ's girlfriends would use to invite him in within the game. Roughly a month after the game's PC release, the ESRB began an investigation into the Hot Coffee mod. Wildenborg posted in a statement on the website used to download the mod, clarifying that the sexual content was impossible to access in a standard retail copy of the game without altering the original code. Although Rockstar went as far as to call Wildenborg personally to thank him for the statement, they went on to use his remark to push blame on the modding community for sexual content being in the game at all. Despite this, on July 20th, 2005, the ESRB changed the game's rating from mature to adults only 18+, prompting Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Circuit City to remove the game from their shelves almost immediately. At this time, Rockstar attempted to recall any copies of the game and create a version which would not possess the contents revealed by the Hot Coffee mod. The Hot Coffee incident went mainstream before Rockstar could remedy the situation, prompting political discussion and intervention from the Federal Trade Commission. Rockstar cooperated, and eventually the FTC found that Take-Two, Rockstar's parent company, was deceptive in the way it marketed the game, but did not punish them. However, they were eventually fined roughly $20 million via a class action lawsuit for violations of federal securities laws. Senator Hillary Clinton was outspoken on the matter, going so far as to call for federal game regulation. As a send-off to the Hot Coffee incident, in Grand Theft Auto 4, the Statue of Liberty's face bears striking resemblance to Hillary Clinton and, instead of a torch, is holding a mug of hot coffee. While the Hot Coffee incident may be one of the biggest controversies the Grand Theft Auto franchise has had, the series has a history with last-second game alterations. Grand Theft Auto 3 released October 23, 2001, roughly 1 month after the September 11th attacks on New York. Houser was quoted saying, "We felt that a full content review of all our titles was absolutely necessary for us in light of the horrifying event we all witnessed in New York City last week. As for Grand Theft Auto, so far we have come across certain small contextual references that we were no longer comfortable with, as well as a couple of very rare gameplay instances that no longer felt appropriate to us." Most of the changes were pretty basic and include making the police vehicles black instead of blue, the removal of school buses, school children, and elderly pedestrians using walkers, and removing the limb detachment system. What appears to be the biggest change is the character Darkel being cut from the game entirely. Darkel was initially mentioned in early publications by gaming websites to be a revolutionary bent on bringing down Liberty City's economy with terrorist attacks. Darkel's missions were supposedly similar to the series' famous Rampage missions, but they made it into the game in a different form without Darkel's involvement. Despite being cut from the game, he's still listed in the credits and has a character texture and voiced lines all stashed within the game's code. Despite all these changes, Grand Theft Auto 3 remained very controversial due to its copious 3D rendered violence. To make matters worse, just 2 years after the game was released, it was brought up in statements by William and Josh Buckner, who were arrested after shooting at cars along Interstate 40. One person was killed and another seriously wounded. They claimed they decided to randomly shoot at tractor trailer rigs, just like in Grand Theft Auto 3. Take-Two filed for dismissal of the suit, contending that the ideas and purported psychological effects on the Buckners as a result of the game are protected by free speech. The suit was eventually thrown out, but the lawyer who represented the victims, Jack Thompson, went on to oppose Rockstar and the Grand Theft Auto franchise on several occasions. Even since the original Grand Theft Auto, the franchise has been surrounded by controversy. However, according to the original creators of the game, David Jones and Mike Daly, they were never, ever influenced by, let's do something to create a bit of controversy. Despite this claim, Max Clifford, their PR man for the game, purposely took advantage of the game's controversial nature to grow awareness. He designed all the outcry, which pretty much guaranteed members of parliament would get involved. According to Jones, Clifford planted stories in publications that he knew certain members of parliament would read and thus be outraged over. He'd made predictions regarding what certain people would say about the game to inadvertently generate free press, and it always played out as he said it would. Regarding the original promotion, Clifford said he'd forgotten about most of the events Jones spoke of, but he wouldn't argue with his claims. He stated, "We've taken on controversial things over the years, but we've turned down controversial things over the years. You have to look at it, you weigh it all up, and you take it from there. And sometimes you work with people's double standards and hypocrisy." That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to DidYouKnowGaming and follow DidYouKnowGaming on Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you also check out DidYouKnowGaming.com, and if you like this video, check out some more videos. And while it has nothing to do with Grand Theft Auto, if you happen to like The Legend of Zelda, I, Todd from Rated S Games, made a video on The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. It's pretty good. The game, I mean, jury's out on the video, I don't know.